Hello everyone, my name is Roy Smith. I'm the art teacher at Lone Oak Elementary in Paducah, Kentucky. Students to experience what I experienced through this unique journey through Black History Month, and as I was trying to teach them something a little bit appreciation of Black History Month and what some of our amazing Black artists have to offer. And I took, like I said, I took a very unexpected journey. So here's what I'd like to do. All of these are the projects that stemmed from this journey. But it all started with me trying to come up with a neat lesson for Black History Month. And I started over here in the corner looking for a book on my shelf on Black artists like Faith Ringgold, Jacob Lawrence, Horace Pippin. And so as I was looking through my library of books, I was trying to find a book. I said, I thought I had a book on Jacob Lawrence, and I was looking through, and I actually ran into this book. This book is about, it's called Dave the Potter, and it's the artist, poet, and slave. And this book changed my whole month of February, and it inspired me to create some different art projects that I don't normally do. And I learned some really amazing stuff that I'd like to share with you now. And this book, like I said, it took me on an unexpected journey, and I ended up buying 2 more books that I didn't have. And so what I did was I created a page on my website that would walk the students through my journey. And in the month of February, what I did was each week I posted a new segment of the story. And then the second week I'd add more information until we ended up with a lesson plan that had 4 parts to it. So it's a unit with 4 lesson plans. And so I hope that you enjoyed the journey as much as I did. All right, this is my website. I call it Art in the Flash. And what I've done is I've made a tab for projects for home. And this is where I was going to put all of my lessons for my virtual students and for all of my students in class that like to learn a little extra, and create Black lesson plans for Black History Month to celebrate Black artists and their accomplishments, and to share my journey. And so, like I said earlier, I was looking for a book about Jacob Lawrence and ran across a book. And so this website, I created this page so that students could follow me on this journey and learn and experience and explore the way that I did, and learning about these awesome artists. And so if when you go to the website, and I'll give you a little clip of the book Dave the Potter, and it gives you a couple of paragraphs that sort of explains what led me to discovering the book Dave the Potter. And so this is my week 1 in February, and this is my lesson. So again, I have a little description of how and I discovered this book. It was actually given to me by our librarian several years ago, and it somehow just got placed on the shelf, and I just never got around to reading it. And so, looking for a book about Jacob Lawrence, I pulled this out on the shelf and read it, and it turned out to be a fabulous book. And so I was just really, really fascinated by this story about the slave whose name was Dave, that lived in North Carolina or South Carolina, one of the two. And but he was a real skilled potter. And what was remarkable was that he actually wrote little phrases on his ginormous pots that he made. And so this book sort of goes through and tells the story about not only about Dave and his story, but it also explains the process of creating pottery. And so it was just a really, really neat story. And so I was just fascinated by the story. And so I did a little research, and in my research, I popped up, Dave had actually popped up on the Antiques Roadshow. And I just thought that was really, really, really cool. Sorry about all these little windows that are popping up. But one of his pots showed up on the Antiques Roadshow. And so what I could do with this website was kids can sort of go at their own pace, read the description of about why I did this, and where I was getting my information, and they can click on these little videos, and it sort of helps tell the story behind some of the stories. And the Antiques Roadshow, from KET, they show some of his pots, and the appraiser who's talking to this lady sort of explains how much value this was, and it gives also a little bit more history about Dave himself. And so this one thing I could do with this website and make it interactive is, the kids can actually go through the same journey as I am researching it. And then with the whole idea of throwing these ginormous pots like Dave did, I could actually include a short clip of someone creating a pottery bowl using a potter's wheel like Dave. The only problem is, or the only difference is, Dave was using a kick pedal potter's wheel to make his wheel turn, whereas this young lady is actually using an electric. But the process is still sort of the same, and it's always mesmerizing in watching someone throw a pot. And so the art activity for this comes from Dave's poetry. The little short poems or phrases that he wrote reminded me of some of the African proverbs that we use in some of our West African projects. And so I thought, well, this would be a good way to add some of those little proverbs. And so what I have is I list some of my favorite African proverbs, and the students' project was to illustrate what they think that proverb meant. And so two of the ones that I chose as as a demonstration or an example is, let's see. Well, I did an English version where it's like a caught between a rock and a hard place, and so students click on it, it enlarges them, and I just sort of thought with the African theme, I have a big rock, but have the elephant sitting sniffing flowers, squooshing the tour guide, and that's sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. And this proverb is an African proverb where it rains, but the rain does not wash off the leopard spots. And so, we can sort of discuss what these proverbs mean, but what would it look like if someone actually, if the kids actually illustrated it? And they take things so literal, and I thought that might have been a fun little drawing project for the students. So that's how these projects started. But Dave's, the book about Dave the Potter was so, it impacted me so much that I was really curious, and because, illustrating the how pots are made and how the clay was made, or the process of using clay to make a pot, I thought the illustrations were done so well. I wanted to know a little bit more about the illustrator, and the illustrator is Brian Collier, and Brian Collier is a Caldecott Award winner. He is also the Claretta Scott King Illustrator Award. He's a very, very talented illustrator. And so in week 2, what if we focused on another African-American artist, but this time I want to do the illustrator of Dave the Potter. And I found some neat images of Dave, and I also realized of how he's just done a lot of books. And I found a little video clip of an interview with Brian Collier, and this interview strung a chord that really impacted me quite a bit. And so I'd like to play the interview real quick.
My name is Brian Collier. and I'm an author and illustrator of picture books. I reside in upstate New York, where I live with my family and create books. I've created about 39 picture books so far, with about 4 books on their way. Well, the style of the work is watercolor and collage, primarily for books so far. And I was influenced by my grandmother making quilts when I was a kid. Now, at the time, I didn't know it. It was just something that she did, something that I saw. But when I became an artist, the influence sort of found its way into my work. So she planted this silent gift in me as an artist, and that's what the work is now. The name of the exhibit is You Can't Outgrow a Picture Book. No matter how old you get, no matter how bright you are, how many degrees you get, that picture book expands way beyond you. There was one book that I did that I got at age 4 called Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats. Peter. When I was 4, Peter and I looked just alike. And it's so funny, I tell the story about that. I had the same pajamas that Peter had in the book. And that's why I was really drawn to it. So when I grew up, became an artist, I said, I'm going to start telling some stories about us, telling our story. So the images are reflective of the African-American experience, black and brown, beautiful children, and our stories. And that's what I celebrate in the books.
What he said about seeing someone in a book that looked like him, that really struck a chord with me, and I had never really thought about that. And it made me start thinking about all of the students that I have that are from different races or ethnicity. And I thought, I probably need to make a stronger effort to make sure that I'm including other people from other cultures, other races. And I just thought that was a very powerful statement that he made. And so if you scroll on down in the website, I actually put the books that influenced Brian Collier the most. The Snowy Day, Whistle for Willie, and Harold and Purple Crayon. And, I share Harold and Purple Crayon when we're talking about lines, but I thought that was just, again, really interesting how he identified with the character, and that was the first time that he saw a character in a book that he related to. And so I was also really impressed with his style. And Brian Collier uses a collage technique where he's painting, and then he cuts it up, and he creates these unique collages. And so I have a little video. I found a little clip of a video that will show the students his process in his own words. And then for the art project for week number 2 in February, I thought, well, what if we learn from Brian Collier and let's create a collage? So if you're learning at home, you have access to newspapers or magazines. What if we cut up shapes and glue a story? What if we drew a picture and then if you can't draw a dinosaur, cut one out and glue it into your picture? What kind of story could you tell by using the collage technique? And what I have done was I created a collage of Brian Collier and all of his books that he has illustrated over the years. And so I've got this hanging up in my room, but I thought that was a unique, looking up to this illustrator, and we made a collage and the process that he would have used. And then for the art activity, I also created this drawing, and then collaged a dinosaur that I cut out from a magazine, and a Vincent van Gogh picture, and Vincent van Gogh. And I thought the story would have been really neat if in the process of painting the Starry Night, a T-Rex comes out and joins him, and says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And for the fun of it, I created this how-to video where students can see me create this. So the kids could actually see the process of creating a collage, again based on Brian Collier's technique of illustrating some of his amazing books. So again, I wanted to make this website very interactive, and I'd like to share it with everyone else. Now, the third week, after learning more about Brian Collier, I realized he had illustrated another book about Ernie Barnes, and that's this book here. So this gives you a little information behind the scenes of the book, and then this video clip actually tells you a little bit more about Ernie Barnes. And Ernie Barnes, which was really neat story, he was a football player. And so if you scroll down, let me pause that video. If you scroll down, here's some photographs of Ernie Barnes. He was a very successful football player back in his day. But he always had this passion for creating and painting. And so this is one of those unique stories where a professional football player becomes a famous artist. And his artwork was actually featured in the TV show of Good Times. And that's a show that I sort of grew up with in the 70s. But I forgot that JJ, the main character, was wanting to be an aspiring artist, and the art paintings that they showed him working on were actually Ernie Barnes's artwork. And so this unique story that stemmed from Dave the Potter goes to from the illustrator to who illustrated a book about an artist who I had seen and was probably influenced way back in early childhood. And I just thought that was a really unique story. And the Ernie story has, it's a very interesting book. So I really encourage you to read it. If not, you can, I can't remember if I'm reading the book to the students or, but you can actually click on this and get his story. But it's again, from a football player to becoming a famous artist. But Ernie has this unique talent of painting people in motion, and as he is sort of telling a story, he's just got this unique style of doing people in motion, dancing. Here they are worshiping, dancing. You can just almost feel like you're there, and you hear the sounds. And he also did paintings of people in action and motion, people playing football and sports. He was actually one of the artists who made posters for one of the Olympics. The date just went by. But it was when the Olympics was in the United States in Los Angeles, the Summer Olympics. But again, like I said, the figures in action and motion are just phenomenal. And so the art project for this was, how can I teach students Ernie Barnes' style? And what if we created like gesture drawings, and then show you how to do the gesture drawings and creating the pose, and then making them people in action. And so the picture you see here, I show the kids step by step of actually how I created this. How I start off with stick figures, and that's why I'm illustrating here with a pre-drawn. It's a photograph of two kids, but I make them into stick characters, and I can move those stick characters and make them do whatever pose I want. And then you go in and add the muscles and clothes. And then this is just a fun little gesture drawing of me drawing kids and me painting here in the middle of trying to paint a landscape on the playground, and all the kids that are sort of playing and having a good time on the playground. And so you get to see all of that in this little video, a tutorial video. And then to help students to draw people in motion, I used some of my how to draw books and selected people. This is from Sports Illustrated, that shows how to create somebody swinging at a baseball player. And then we have a football player. This is something that Ernie Barnes could have drawn in one of his paintings. And then down here at the bottom, I use several different books and resources, but I made it so that kids don't have to print these out. if they click on them, it enlarges them, and they can do this at home. But if they wanted to, they could also click on the link below, and it'll take it to a PDF, and they can actually print them out. So it'll help them create their own picture of people in motion, again, stemming from Ernie Barnes, which also goes back to Brian Collier, the illustrator, which I didn't learn of him until I read the book Dave the Potter. And then the last week, week number 4, the last week of February, we do another book by Ernie Barnes called Trombone Shorty. This is not the book cover of Trombone Shorty, but this is a audio book that you can use. And there's actually 2 books that sort of tell a very similar story. And Trombone Shorty is actually written by Trombone Shorty himself. And it's a really neat story of how this young kid at a very early age finds a trumpet in the dumpster in the alley of New Orleans. And he's just so fascinated with music that he sort of teaches himself how to play. And then him and his friends find other instruments, and they sort of create a band. And they do walk up and down the streets playing every day at 5 o'clock. And that's where you get the 5 o'clock band. But this is a Trombone Shorty, sort of tells the story of how he's a kid playing the trumpet, and he actually becomes a very famous jazz musician. And so I got to thinking, all of these books that we have read were about kids. Brian Collier, the illustrator, tell us how he was a kid in seeing the books with people of color that looked like him. That inspired him to become an illustrator. We saw Ernie Barnes, who wanted to become an artist. He really didn't want to become a football player, but his high school football coach sort of pressed him into playing, and he became a professional football player. But then he turned famous artist. And so it's neat that all of these stories sort of stem, even the story about our illustrator, Brian Collier, it all sort of stems as a kid. And all these kids grow up to do awesome things that impact everybody else's lives. And so to wrap up this unit was, what if you drew a book cover of the, and the book is about the students illustrated a book of the things that they're going to accomplish and how they would change the world. What would their book cover look like? And so we see the book cover of Trombone Shorty. Of course, this is the 5 o'clock band. I don't know if we this may actually show you the book cover for Trombone Shorty here in a second. There you go. It's zooming out. But and then Ernie Barnes. What would your book cover look like? In the future, that somebody's going to illustrate a book about you and how you would change the life. What would that book cover look like? And that's sort of how we finished up my unit in covering Black History Month, and very special, unique African American artist that has impacted us. And this was a really truly unique journey that inspired me, that I was just fascinated with, and I think this was probably one of the most awesome months that I had, especially trying to teach virtual and try to teach students in class. So I hope that you enjoyed the story. Go to the website, go through it. Maybe you can get some good information from it. But I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have. And so I just wanted to share that with everyone. I hope everybody's well. Be safe, and hopefully see you next year at the ARC conference. Goodbye, everyone.